What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Bought to Build YouTube channel. If you're new to the channel, we've been working on my yellow GTO here. We've got all the suspension done. We've got some nice Viking springs, axles, new Petters shocks, diff brace, all the brakes. We also did the whole front end, literally every bushing and every part you can replace, except for wheel bearings, we pretty much replaced. We've got the engine out of this. And we've been stealing some parts off my red GTO. Reason being, that one's got 150,000 miles on it. This one we picked up super cheap. It's only got 40,000 original miles, and it's yellow, so it'll match our Hellcat, as well as a few other reasons we picked it up. I mean, this thing is just absolutely like showroom condition, so I'm pretty pumped about that. But the last video, we did the CHE trunnion upgrade. Make sure, if you guys didn't see that video, to go back on the GTO playlist and check it out. While you're there, check out that subscribe button too. So today, we're gonna be moving right down the line. We're gonna drain the oil, get the dampener off, get the water pump off, and some other stuff, get the timing cover off, and then we should be able to get in there at the oil pump. We're gonna be putting a Melling 10295 pump in this thing. We are going to be using the standard spring that comes in this pump. Should work out perfectly good for our application. So let's go ahead and get set up here and we can start draining the oil. Alright guys, so we got some of the accessory stuff off. We left the water pump on just because I don't want water to get everywhere and make a mess until after we get the ATI off. We went ahead and grabbed our bolts. They are 3/8 by 16. Now, in the dampener itself, or damper itself, you've got a bunch of different threaded holes. Well, you don't want to just pull off at any one of them. The holes that we chose, you can see this outer piece is not threaded on it. It's not a beveled hole. And then when you look in the hole, you can see two different sets of threads. One set is bigger than the other, and one set goes to the actual hub piece itself. And then the second set that you see in there actually goes to the AC pulley, which is in the back, because this is actually a 3-piece damper. So we want to be pulling on the threads that go to the actual hub. So if that's a little bit tricky for you guys to figure out which one is which, because there's a lot of different threads and a lot of different hole options here, you can look in there like I said, and you're going to see the one that this piece is not threaded and it's not beveled. You will see a first set of threads and then a second set of threads. We're going to be using those holes with the 3/8 16 bolts. So let's go ahead and set this up. We are nice and centered here. So I'm going to take my little impact just very low. You don't need to crank these things on. I'm just going to use it to run it in. Do the same thing with this one. So now those are all started, nice and snug. Now we're going to go ahead and start backing this off. And then we are going to take a couple of adjustable wrenches. Now you just want to hold this piece in place. while doing the work with this one. Put a ratchet with an extension in there instead. Should have done that from the beginning, but I didn't even think about it. So as you guys seen last night, we got the damper off it. We also got some of the accessory drive stuff off that we need to get out of our way. Next up is going to be to drain the oil. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to drain the oil into a clean container and then put it into some jugs, because I just did an oil change on this thing about a week before we decided to pull the engine out with AMSOIL. So my thought process is I'm going to drain it to something clean. When we put the engine back in the car, we'll put it back in, run it for a heat cycle or two to get any assembly lube and just any crap out of it. Drain it, put a new filter and new oil back in it, and then we should be good to go. So we've got our damper over here that we got off, our oil pump, our new damper bolt, and then we've got all the stuff that comes with the oil pump. We shouldn't need any of these things here. We will need one of these. We'll see which one we need when we get the pickup tube off. So let's go ahead and drain the oil and get started. Those are tighter than I thought. Alright guys, so as you've seen, we got the timing cover off. Now we have access to our oil pump. A lot of guys just loosen the pan a little bit, just enough to get the pickup tube off of it. So that's not what we're going to do though. What we're going to do is take the entire pan off, because I want to clean it out and check the screen and all that good stuff before it goes back together. So now we're working on getting the pan out of there. We've got the bolts for the starter out, and we got the starter out of the way. There's also a little plastic, almost like a shim that goes in, like on the transmission side of the starter, and it has this bolt in it. So you take that one out and you can get that out of there. And then there's another little shield on this side we took off that went right here. So now you can see the flywheel and the clutch and stuff. So we got those out of the way. Now we are going to start taking all the pans around the bolt off. Pans around the bolt off. Pans around the bolt off. Or bolts around the pan off. We got all the ones off of this side. And then we still got to do this side. As you guys can see, there's one here from the bell housing. And then there's another little one down here. Right there, that's super long. Let me show you guys real quick. It's a really long little bolt. So that one's got to come out, and then this one's going to have to come out. And then obviously all the ones around the pan. So let's go ahead and get set up, and we can start doing that. They are, most of them are all 10 millimeter, and then I think this one and a couple other little ones were 13 mil. But let's go ahead and loosen those. I also forgot to mention, guys, you probably don't have to undo the dipstick, but I took the bolt out from the head right here, and then you can just wiggle it a little bit and pull, and the dipstick will come out. All right, let's get this pan off.
All right, now it's sitting on that bar.
You're gonna have to take that bar out of there.
Yep. I want to balance it basically. Ready?
No. Yeah.
Let me take it right off. Yeah.
Hold on, so it feels funny. There we go.
Hey, hang on to that for a second.
What?
My fingers. That's out.
You guys seen as we got this pan off. Now we are working on getting it prepped. First thing I was gonna do was take this gasket off, but then I realized that there's actually rivets that hold this gasket on. I'm sure it's just for like assembly, for the robots or whatever to slap the pan on. But you can see this one I got out. This one is still in. All I did was take a little drill bit and drill the head off of the rivet, and then what I did, because I'm not going to be putting a rivet on the new gasket, so what I did was I just tapped the rivet down a little bit, and I think I'm going to leave it right in that hole just to keep that hole plugged up. Not a huge deal. So I'm going to set up to drill this one, and then we'll start cleaning this all out and get it all cleaned up. I am still waiting on one thing. These GTOs, even though they don't have A.F.M or D.O.D, they come with a pressure relief valve inside the pan, but since we're running the Melling 10295 pump, it's not a high volume pump, it's just a higher pressure pump. So we can go ahead and delete this. So I'm just waiting for that plug. I think it's like M14 by 1.5. And I'm waiting on that from Summit still. It should be here either tomorrow or the next day. But in the meantime, we can continue to clean all this stuff up. I use the CRC brake clean. You can get chlorinated and not chlorinated. You guys can see I've got a whole bunch of cans here. Just a little life hack for you guys. I order from PSC, which is Petroleum Service Company, and it's really good prices. I mean, I got a case of 12 of the big cans. I think it was like 43 bucks or 44 bucks, and then it gets shipped right to your door. And I did the math on it, and when you buy it at like AutoZone or O'Reilly's, even if you buy the store brand, you're gonna end up paying way more. I did the math by ounces, and I couldn't believe the price that it worked out to be with these cans and in a case of 12. So just a little hack for you guys. If you guys use a lot of different fluids and stuff like that, I would check them out. You can get some really good prices from them, and I was super happy with it. It came super quick. I'm not sponsored or I don't get anything for it. I just figured I'd tell you guys about it because who doesn't like to save some money? So let's go ahead and get this pan cleaned up and keep on moving. Alright, so next, I'm going to go ahead and just take my little punch I have here. I just push it back just a little bit. I'll show you guys. Just enough so that it's down in there some, so you're never gonna have to worry about it getting caught or anything like that. And then you can see on the side of the pan right there, I just leave it sticking out like that. It's not gonna hurt anything, so I just leave it there. Alright, let's start cleaning this pan up a little bit. This thing's a mess. Alright guys, so now we're going to go ahead and get the pickup tube out of there. So all you've got to do is loosen the bolt that's right here going to the pump, and then there is another bolt on the windage tray. Well, it's actually a nut. So let's go ahead and loosen those. And that's it. It's out. Make sure to keep your O-ring and take note of what style tube and what color and style O-ring you have, so we know which one to put back on it. Let's go clean this up. Alright guys, so as you can see, we got this all cleaned up. Got this all cleaned up last night. It came out really good. I'm really happy with how everything looks now. It wasn't really all that bad. I mean, it was pretty crappy in there, but it wasn't as bad as I was expecting for how many miles were on this car and how much I've beat the crap out of it for the last few years. So I'm pretty happy about that. Our little valve delete kit here came in from Summit. Not sure if you guys can see that, but we're gonna go ahead and pop this pressure relief valve out. As far as I know, this is for vehicles that had A.F.M and things like that with a high volume pump from the factory so that it could bypass some pressure. Obviously we don't need that. We went with the Melling 10295, which is a standard volume, higher pressure pump, and we're going to be running the standard spring that comes pre-installed on it, so we should have no need for this guy. So we might as well get rid of it. If you don't need it, delete it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's pop that out and put our plug in. Alright, I put a little bit of blue Loctite on there. You could use red, I guess. It's something that's probably never going to have to take this thing back out, but I went to 18 foot-pounds, not really sure if there's I'm sure there's a torque spec for it. I don't know what it is though, to be honest, guys. But 18 just felt good, so that's where we landed. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. I think we're going to start taking the oil pump off. So as you guys can see, our factory O-ring was blue. So according to Melling, we are going to use the black O-ring for install. So we're going to put the black O-ring on. So before we start this thing for the first time, what we're going to do is we're going to take this plug right here, this Allen head plug out, and we're going to use a rubber hose. I forget what size it is, but I'll tell you guys later on when I get the hose out. And we're going to put the hose in there, and it's a tight fit, so it should like thread into the hole. And then we're going to use a funnel on the end of the hose and pour oil into it and let it basically run into the pump, because this port will put it directly into the pump. So you basically effectively are priming the pump. Now, that's how Melling says to do it at home. They do sell a pressure priming tool, but like I said, I don't need to buy that. I think this is going to work just fine for us. We're just going to do it with a funnel and a hose, and it should have plenty of oil inside the pump. And then as soon as we fire it for the first time, it should be primed enough to where it's just going to instantly suck oil. So let's go ahead and get set up, and we will start getting this pump put on. I have already put a little bit of blue Loctite on these threads. Now we're gonna run these in finger tight for now. Alright, and the way that I'm gonna do it is I run them in literally just finger tight like you just seen. We're gonna put our balancer bolt in. And we're gonna turn the engine 360 degrees. Once the bolt tightens up here. Alright, so we're going to turn the engine itself 360 degrees. That's about 180. So that's about 360 degrees. So now, with your torque wrench set at 18 foot-pounds, we're going to come over here, and I'm just going to snug it a little bit. 18 foot-pounds should be pretty easy to achieve. Now I'm just going to go back over them and double check it. And that's it as far as putting the pump on. You guys can go ahead and turn it over one more time just to make sure everything feels good to you. According to Melling, this is fine too. You can do it with feeler gauges and stuff, but they said at home this is perfectly fine, so that's what we're gonna do. Alright, so we're gonna take our pickup tube and we're gonna go ahead and get it pretty close to lined up. Might have to play with it a little bit because the O-ring is pretty snug and you're trying to line up the bolt, the nut that goes to the windage tray, as well as trying to get this lined up. So now that we got that lined up, I'm going to go ahead and get this bolt started. So we've got that one finger tight, which I did put some blue Loctite on that one as well. I definitely recommend putting Loctite on them. I did Loctite on the one that goes to our windage tray as well. With your torque wrench set at 106 inch-pounds, we're going to go ahead Alright, so we've got this one torqued, 106 inch-pounds once again. Now we can switch back to foot-pounds, and we want to set it at 18 foot-pounds for the bolt, the nut that goes to the windage tray. So with your torque wrench set at 18 foot-pounds, now we can go ahead and tighten up the nut for the pickup tube and windage tray. Once again, it shouldn't take much pressure, and we are good. Alright, so let's finish cleaning up the gasket for the timing cover, and we can put the timing cover on and then go ahead and put the pan back on. Alright guys, so you can see I cleaned the cover up a little bit. It's not perfect, but it definitely looks a hell of a lot better than it did. It looked pretty crappy when we first took it off. So now we're going to go ahead and put a new seal in it. We've got the new seal here. GM part numbers are right there. So I'm gonna put just a little bit of RTV around it before we press it in. I think the GM manual says oil, but I'm gonna do RTV. So let's go ahead and pop it in there. Alright guys, so we're getting ready to slap our timing cover gasket on. I use GM part number right there. We're gonna put some RTV, some Permatex Ultra Black right around the timing cover, just a super thin layer, and then we're gonna glue the gasket on, and then we will bring it over to the engine and put it on here. We cleaned up all of our surfaces good, and then we will get that set on finger tight, and then we're gonna try to install the balancer, which might be kind of a challenge because we have to try to line up our pin from when we pin the crank. So that might be fun. And then once we get all that on and get the balancer on it, it should center it pretty good. We're gonna check with a straight edge to make sure we're flush with the pan mating surface, and then we can torque everything down and move on to the oil pan. Alright guys, so we set the timing cover on here. It's just on finger tight, not even really finger tight, they're all loose. We're gonna try to set our balancer on to center this. You wanna make sure you're flat and even with the where the oil pan mating surface is gonna be. It might take us a couple tries because we're gonna be trying to line up our current crank pin. Not sure if we're gonna make it. We're hoping for the best because I don't really want to re-drill it if I don't have to. But my puller, the kit you guys saw me use to take the balancer off, isn't long enough to reach in there to grab the threads to pull the new balancer, or to put the balancer back on. So that's being kind of a problem for us right now. So you guys, I recommend getting a different puller that will work for this, but we're gonna try to do it the at-home way and use a bolt. Like I said, I don't really recommend you guys doing it, but hopefully it works out.
Right there. Well, come up to you a little bit. A little more. A little more. That should be a lineup pin right there.
Seem good?
Seems to be. I would tap it with a rubber hammer.
Not gonna hit it hard, but I will.
No, rubber hammer. Go for it. Yeah, there you go. Up comes out.
I'm wondering if we should try to get that pin in.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Right on the money.
Should stop soon, yeah. Oh,
That's
stop.
it.
Yep, dab it a couple more times. Just to be safe. Yeah, oh yeah, should bottom. Not how I recommend doing it,
But it works good.
but it does work. And to get our pin lined up, my dad just ground the end of this threaded rod down. It was the same size as our pin because we didn't want to drill all the way through our balancer. A lot of people will drill all the way through the balancer so that you can just line it up right from the start. But then you have to RTV the hole so oil or nothing like that comes out. And we didn't really want to do that. So we ended up using the threaded rod and we just eyeballed it and we got lucky.
Yeah.
I'm going to tap that pin in though.
Yeah, I would just a little bit. More of the pin in there, the better.
Yeah.
Hit it right on the edge like that, you'll be alright.
Oh yeah, there she goes.
Nice.
Money.
Yep.
Alright, now that we got our balancer on and everything's lined up, our crank pin is in, we are lining up our timing cover to be flush with the oil pan surface, and we're going to go around and basically crisscross pattern torque these things down. I'm gonna go around and do crisscross to snug them up, and then I'm gonna go around again and put them at final torque. The torque spec for these bolts is 18 foot-pounds. And we're all done with that. Let's move on. All right, guys, so we've got our ARP bolt and washer. We put the lubricant that comes with it on the threads, on the underhead of the bolt, the washer, and the face in there. Once we have it hand snug, we will go to the torque wrench. And the torque spec for this, according to ARP, is 235 foot-pounds. All right, so we're hand tight. I was worried about that.
You might have to do it from the other side.
Still might try to do that. Yep. If it does, we'll have to wait until it's in the car. Alright, that's 235. Alright guys, so we've got our gasket set on here. We cleaned the pan with acetone, or lacquer thinner I mean. And this is the gasket we are using. It's a Fel-Pro gasket. Should work out just fine for us. We're going to go ahead and get set up here. We're going to put a little bit of RTV in the corners where the timing cover meets and the rear cover meet the block and the oil pan. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll Loctite our bolts and start putting this thing together. Alright guys, so to start torquing these, the way we're going to do it is I'm going to do all four corners at half torque first. And then we'll do the pan, like all the main pan bolts, at their 18 foot-pounds. And then we'll come back to the corner and do the final torque on the corners last. So half torque first and then full torque last. Huh? These oil pan, well, the bell housing to oil pan ones are 35 foot-pounds. So we just took some cool tape. It's like insulation. This stuff here. You can get big sheets of it too, which we have. We use it on the floor. And we wrapped the starter with it. We also have a heat blanket that goes over this thing because it's right next to the headers. And we actually found out that before we put a blanket on it, this thing used to, like when the car would get hot after a long drive, you'd park, shut it off, you'd go to crank it, and it would super slow crank like the battery was dead. And then not very long after that, the starter actually died. Well, we put a new starter in it, it did the same thing, it cranked really slow. So then I heat taped it like this and put a blanket over it, and now ever since then the car cranked right up perfectly fine even after long rides. So if your guys' starter is anywhere near your headers, I would definitely recommend it. It just keeps them alive longer and keeps them happy. Alright, so we've got our old water pump cleaned up. Best we're going to clean it. I'm not going to worry about cleaning up the corrosion and stuff because eventually I'd like to, like when this one goes bad, I'd like to put an electric water pump on the car so at the track you can have a fan blowing on the intercooler and radiator and turn the water pump on every once in a while. But for now, we're going to go ahead and put some RTV on here. And then we have the GM gaskets right here. And then we can put it back together. We're getting there. We're getting pretty close with this thing. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and set our water pump on. I left that on there for a reason.
Yeah.
22 foot-pounds. So now your water pump's on. We're gonna go and change our thermostat. I wanna run a 180 thermostat in this thing. Alright guys, so when I went to the parts store the other day, I was looking for a 180 degree thermostat. This was the only one I could find locally, so that's what we went with. But 180, we're going to go ahead and put this thing in, and then we are pretty much done. With your torque wrench set at 10 foot-pounds, you can go ahead and tighten these up. We're going to go ahead and pop this plug. Not sure if you guys can see it down here. Here, I'll turn you upside down. This plug right here. We're gonna go ahead and pop that out so that we can prime our new oil pump, and then we can start disconnecting the steering shaft and a few other things to start trying to work these headers back in here. Alright guys, so what we're gonna do now is we took a 3/8 hose and threaded it into that Allen plug on the side of the block, and we're going to prime our oil pump. Make sure it's not leaking anywhere. Now, Melling recommends 8 ounces, and he said if it doesn't take it all, basically stand here for about 3 minutes, and then we should be good. Alright guys, so it took all the oil. We're just gonna let this sit here for a little while, make sure all the oil's out of the hose. I think it's pretty well pumped. I think we're pretty well primed. I think we're pretty much good to go. Alright guys, so I think that's gonna wrap up today's video. Hopefully it helped some of you guys out. If it did, please think about sharing it with some family, friends, anything like that. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're not already, please think about subscribing to the channel, ringing the bell, commenting, liking. All that stuff really helps the channel grow. We've got some big news coming up with the Hellcat. It should be coming home soon. The pistons are finally on their way, so that thing should be getting wrapped up soon, as well as this thing here. I mean, we're making progress. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to get this thing dialed in, get it on the dyno, and then get it out and see what it can really do. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with us today, and we will catch you on the next one.